Hi, thanks for joining myself, Steve Hayes, Michael Darby from Element. This is a small video, really. Michael and I do a regular Tea Time Top Tips industry update on various different topics in our world of regulatory compliance. And one of the ones that we did recently, we were talking about radio modules, a topic that is a regular, reoccurring theme of stuff that we talk about. And so we just really wanted to spend a couple of minutes just talking about radio modules, because in the last Red CA meeting, Michael, radio modules came up again, and you made some interesting observations or comments, I guess, really to the floor on radio modules. And so, yeah, just really want to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Steve. Just to give my own background, why am I talking about this? You know, I'm pretty deeply involved in the radio module world. Primary author of Red CA's Technical Guidance Note 01 on modules, and key contributor and chair of the module committee in the FCC's KDB 996369 on modules. So I'm really involved in this topic. And genuinely I would say that it is the most complex thing you can do from a testing and approvals world is to integrate a radio module into a product, and laughably done by people who know the least about radio technology usually. The module manufacturers know the technology of radios, and the people who install them know their own products, and this is the background of it. And so the point I was really trying to make at the Red CA is this: if we scroll back to the early days of the radio module industry, a lot of it came about because you had products getting FCC certification, for example, and so the certification file would list the output power and the frequency stability and the parts list of a radio. And if you had some company that would make a radio module, and then everybody would plug that module into their product, and then they would go out and get their product certified, then suddenly, let's say you sold that module to 100 manufacturers. Over a period of months, you might get 100 products getting certified with the exact same parts list, the exact same output power, and the exact same frequency, because they all contain the same transmitter hardware. And so the modular approvals process was born. So you go, look, you can certify or register this transmitter hardware, and then you install it. Now, early radio modules, they were quite a significant thing with a big connector, and the idea is you just plug it into a product and there it was, and you didn't really modify it. It had its own antenna, kind of like you can imagine a laptop with a USB dongle, but it's just inside. It's a big detachable thing. And so the early idea of a radio module certification by the FCC kind of assumed, well, you test the module on its own, and then when you put it in, the transmitter part is certified, and you won't need to retest it because it's already been fully tested, and so that's that. And so it was created this very linear transactional business approach where a module manufacturer made a module and tested it and then sold it on to the next person. And the next person took it, installed it into their product, and then sold that. And nobody really needed to communicate with each other.
Almost like additive manufacturing.
Exactly,
it just builds up as it goes.
A step and a step, and then the user gets the end product of these two parts that have been put together. Everybody's happy, nobody really overlaps. And you have to remember that our world is split into two halves. We talk about test and approvals like it's one thing, but really you've got testing and approvals being two separate things. You have to test a product and then get it approved. And the modules world proves that you can have a product which is approved, like a radio module, and then the end product gets tested. Well, now, over the years, people like the FCC and other market surveillance authorities and manufacturers themselves began to realize that if you've got a module that passes the tests on its own and a product that passes the tests on its own, you put the two together, who knows what's going to happen? And actually, in a lot of cases, the end product fails the tests. Two approved products combined together. And in Europe, of course, we don't have modular approvals because we don't have certification. So the end product has to be shown to be compliant, but we still have CE marked modules and CE marked products, and people put them together and they are responsible for the compliance of that end thing. And so over the years, a lot of people have realized I'm going to have to retest with my module installed, but very much a kind of, I think I should, so I'll have a quick look. But the industry has changed, and the radio modules aren't this big clunky plug-in thing anymore. Now they look like a chip and they're solder on. And so the chip or the module might have a CE mark, or it might have an FCC or Canadian certification, but it's soldered onto the host like a component. And then there might be a PCB trace, and then the antenna might be elsewhere. So it's a pre-approved part, but an integral part of the end product. So now the testing of the module really doesn't relate. You could argue that maybe in the early days, this big module that plugs in, the testing probably did relate. And so there's been some people saying modular approvals shouldn't exist here now, or CE marked modules shouldn't exist here now, because you CE mark a module or certify a module, and when you install it, the test results are completely different now. And that is true, the test results are really affected now, but we're overlapping. It can still be approved as a module as long as everybody understands that the end product needs some testing, radio approvals, things like that. Well, the trouble is we still have this very linear approach, and there's been a lot of discussions over the last year or two about how do we make sure that the end product manufacturer takes responsibility and tests. Well, now we're talking all about cybersecurity. So the radio module is CE marked, and so people want to do cybersecurity assessments of a module to CE mark it, to sell it. But they can't do that because they don't know the end environment. And then when they install the module, and the end product manufacturer needs to do a cybersecurity assessment of their whole product, but they might not have access to how the radio module works. So if we try and carry on living this very linear transactional world, it doesn't work, because the module manufacturer really doesn't know where their product's going to be, of course, but also the installer needs some access, whether it's setting the module to a particular channel because they now need to retest it, or whether it's cybersecurity access. I feel like the whole industry has been on the edge of, it needs to stop being so linear and start being more collaborative, more like a sort of relationship where the module manufacturer and the module installer both need to work together. And it might be a case where the module manufacturer isn't just selling a module, they're selling a module and a service and a compliance solution, and the installer needs to understand that they're working
but I guess,
with people.
I mean, that's really good background, and I guess all the guidance that you've been authoring and being part of working groups that's creating still points back to the regulations and the law.
Yeah.
And so what's your feeling then? Do you think it's time for like a review of the directive in this case, or
I think the directive is pretty clear. So if we look at the European Union, the Radio Equipment Directive doesn't mention radio modules anywhere. The only reason a module is CE marked is not so that it can be installed. A module is CE marked so that the module manufacturer can sell it, and that somebody can buy it. And then when they buy it and they install it. So from a Radio Equipment Directive point of view, the directive is very clear that the end product needs an assessment. So I don't think the directive needs a change. I think the way in which the end product manufacturer meets the directive needs a rethink. And over in the USA, the modular approvals are written into the law, into the rules. And I think that would be quite a tricky thing to change. And so the FCC's published guidance where they're saying, don't forget you need to do spot check testing of the end product. It's very difficult for the FCC to mandate that the end product manufacturer retests the transmitter tests, because when the FCC wrote their first module approval rules, they assumed that retesting wouldn't be needed. So it wasn't written in the rules that there would be retesting, but it's in their guidance that it needs to be done. So I think actually the directives and the rules are already there for the end product to be compliant. They're saying the end product needs to be compliant. We're not going to tell you how you do it, but it's very, very hard for a manufacturer of an end product to know their product is compliant without having a good relationship with a module manufacturer. I think my advice when if you're a manufacturer, my advice to you when you're choosing which radio module to install is to not just look up radio modules and go for the cheapest one. It would be to look up radio modules, contact the manufacturers and see which one is going to be the best to work with and the most collaborative. That would be my thought. So from a regulatory point of view, I just see this change and I feel like it's time for a new era of collaboration because people need to, everybody involved in the process needs to be...
Yeah, whoever's integrating that needs the detail.
Exactly, and it's only going to come more and more so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing those thoughts.
That's all right.
Interesting topic.
Happy days.
I can imagine radio modules are going to continue to be a topic of much discussion and debate for ever.
Everything is wireless connected these days. I went to I gave a seminar recently at a sort of trade show exhibition, and I said, look, put your hand up if you're a manufacturer. The hands went up. I said, put your hand up if you make a product with some radio capability in it. All the same hands stayed up. I said, put your hand up if you're a manufacturer, but your product doesn't have a radio in it. All the hands went down. So everybody's putting radio into their products.
Yeah. Great. All right. Well, thank you again. Thanks for listening. If you like this content, then like and subscribe and look out for our other content. Thanks for joining us.